May I suggest you get the best of your wish? May I insist at no contest for little you or smaller I? A larger chance at what all there may lie. On the rise, on the brink of our lives. Bella, please, Bella, you beautiful Luna. Oh, Bella, do what you do. Bella Luna, my beautiful, beautiful moon. How you swoon me like no other.
In my eyes, indisposed, in disguises no one knows. As the face lies the snake in the sun, in my disgrace. Boiling heat, summer stench, neath the black the sky looks dead. Call my name through black hole sun, won't you come, wash away the rain. Black hole sun, won't you come, won't you come, won't you come. Stood a ring, cold and damp, steal the warm wind, tired friend. Times are gone for honest men, sometimes far too long for snakes. In my shoes, walking sleep, in my youth I pray to keep heaven send hell away. No one seems like you anymore. Black hole sun, won't you come, wash away the rain. Black hole sun, won't you come, won't you come. Black hole sun, won't you come, wash away the rain. Black hole sun, won't you come, won't you come, won't you come, won't you
So for all of you out there at the moment wondering what's happened with Radio Astro, here we are, right back for a little bit at least, hopefully for a bit longer. Not just music, but also a bit of talk and entertainment every now and again. Interestingly, this is Black Hole Sun, Chris Cornell's voice, of course. The audio slave, Soundgarden guy who's no longer with us. The name's Bobby Brown, and you heard us during the General Assembly of the IAU, which ended last week, Thursday. And what a gathering. 2,000 plus astronomers from all over the world in Cape Town, which is where we're broadcasting from, or continue to broadcast from. Ironically, from a suburb in Cape Town called Observatory. And we are on the premises of the IAU, amongst others, the South African Astronomical Observatory, and so forth. And we're going to be doing this for a little while, mostly on Mondays and Thursdays. And the idea is to talk to you guys, to talk to astronomers from all over the world, to find out what you're doing, the good work that you're busy with, and to connect you with one another as well. We'll do as much of that as we can. The old gang is still here, and we've got a new addition to the team. And you hear from her on your, I'm going to say wireless because I'm a wireless guy, but you'll hear from her on your computer, wherever it is you're listening to us from. Her name is Sipokazi Vuso, and she was actually at the GA in a slightly different capacity. How are you doing?
I'm good, good. Happy to be here.
What were you doing at the GA again? Remind us.
Okay, so I was the editor of a magazine called the African Science Stars, which is also doing stories on African scientists, African astronomers. Very cool, and I enjoy the GA.
Yeah. And I mean, basically, you were just introducing people to the magazine. So it's a focus on African science stars,
Yes.
right? Not a focus on astronomy necessarily.
Yes, African scientists and African astronomers.
Do you have a passion for science as a whole, or astronomy in particular? And is it just something that you sort of like to talk about, or were you just there incidentally?
I enjoy just learning about what our scientists are doing, what our astronomers are doing. It was just part of what our magazine is about.
Yeah.
And was just an amazing, phenomenal experience for me.
And it's kind of cool because we've now roped her into Radio Astro for a number of reasons, because she has a radio background. So, by the way, and we'll talk about that for a bit. But also she understands science, and there's a good foundational knowledge for science as a whole and astronomy in particular, because African science stars. And this is the thing about writers and journalists, right? You know a little about a lot. But you don't know a lot about much. So we can pretty much tackle any topic until you start getting really deep, and then we'll have to cop out at some point. But you probably know a little bit about a lot, like most other writers do. And this is why we've roped you in. So you worked for an actual, genuine FM radio station. Which one was that?
It's called Wild Coast FM. It's in East London.
East London in South Africa.
Yes, and we did all the fun stuff, what's happening, all the fun stuff that are happening in East London, and just getting the knowledge out there. So it was really, really fun.
So for those of you who were here in Cape Town, in South Africa, for the 2 weeks of the GA, I'm hoping that you got to see a little bit more of the country. I know a lot of you had to probably go back to work and, get back to the grind and so on. But some I know of, one in particular, Katrine, who's in Durban at the moment. So she stuck around for a little bit and then took a bit of a road trip up north. So, and East London is one of it's part of sort of that beautiful part of the Western Cape region, or the Eastern Cape region of South Africa, that is just lush and green and beautiful, and places like the Garden Route is there. Port Elizabeth, which is what it was called, it's now called Gqeberha. Remind me how it's said?
Gqeberha.
There you go.
You try. Not too bad.
One of the Nguni tongues, which some of us struggle with. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful part of the world.
Yeah.
And now you find yourself, must be like 2,000 plus kilometers away from East London. Well, how did you end up in Cape Town?
Yes, I just came here to pursue my media dream. I just wanted to be something bigger than media, and look what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Do you like radio?
Yes, I like radio. I listen to radio, and I grew up listening to it, actually.
Yeah. But would you say you're more radio or a media person, or specifically a magazine writer?
I enjoy writing,
Yeah.
but I enjoy also speaking and communicating. I think like radio, that's where it bridges the gap.
Yeah. So I consider myself a writer also, first and foremost, when people say sort of, what do you do for a living?
And I love your column at the Daily Voice.
Oh yes, I do that.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that you knew about that. So I've got a lot in my head on any given moment, and it needs an out. It needs a platform to be out, and there's a tabloid, sadly, here in the Western Cape, in Cape Town. And I say sadly because of the impression people have of tabloids. It's got this reputation. and it is, but pretty much lives up to the reputation. There's a lot of hype in this tabloid, but my job is not to play into that hype. My job is to tackle sort of more serious things and to comment on politics and social matters and so on and so forth. So I try and give it my best shot. But I was saying that first and foremost, I consider myself a writer essentially, and everything else is kind of by the way. I like to broadcast. I like radio. I did television for a little bit, but I always find myself back to writing at the end of the day, either whether it's columns or magazines or newspapers, but I always end up writing at some point. And I love writing about science. Do you actually write in African Science Stars?
Yes, I actually write, and
That's
I
amazing.
do interviews as well, which are always the most fun because you get to learn so much
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the interview time. But I'm just writing is just a special thing. I enjoy it as well. I think I'm there with you on
Yeah.
that topic.
In terms of writing.
Yeah.
So let me tell you where we are situated for those of you who didn't manage to come swing by here. In Cape Town, we've got, like many major cities, we've got lots of suburbs here. And one of the suburbs is called Observatory. And the reason why it's called Observatory is exactly why you think. It's called Observatory because the very first observatory in South Africa was built here. Now, I don't know when that was, but it's probably, I'm going to guess now, 120, 130 years ago when they built the
Wow.
first one here. It's still here. And if you look out our window and if you have a really long neck, then you'll be able to see it. So it's still here. And that's how the suburb got its name, Observatory. So it's a wonderful compound. There are lots of little buildings where we find ourselves here. There's an observatory here. And obviously it's the home of the South African Astronomical Observatory, which runs this particular old observatory. And the International Astronomical Union, they find their astronomy for development offices here as well. And they are the bosses of Radio Astro. They're the ones who commissioned RadioAstro. Some of you might know the name Kevin Govender. But it's a stunning old NGO compound where we find ourselves with lots of old buildings, beautiful. Some of it
It's
living.
green and
It's stunning.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's almost spring, so
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're slightly elevated, so there's a beautiful view of the mountain. And we're surrounded by main roads and freeways, but it's a lovely place to come to because it's quiet as well. And it's quite lovely.
Yeah, and I actually stay here, so I enjoy it more.
You stay literally a walk away, don't you?
Yes,
Which is
I
amazing.
am lucky.
Bit of a drawback. Observatory is one of the oldest suburbs in Cape Town. But sadly, and maybe for some people excitedly, right next door to us, like a stone throw away, they're busy building this retail space, which is owned by a global online retail giant. Shall we leave it there? They're building this massive retail. It's a mixed use actually, so it's going to be retail and it's going to be accommodations and so forth right next door to us. And I was told some time ago that when they started this project, and there was a big hula bala about this project because it's built in a very sensitive spot to the indigenous peoples, to the indigenous peoples. And some of them didn't want this to happen here. Eventually, this global multinational retail giant managed to get their way and they built this thing there. I think they're going to do some good. They even built a new road, that connects one of our main
They're
freeways here.
saying they want to create 40,000 jobs
There you go.
in Cape Town
There you go.
and boost the local economy.
Yeah.
So we're interested. We're
Yeah.
waiting for that.
Here's the thing. They were going to put up a 20-story high building. And it was actually Kevin Govender and his team here at the SAAO who objected to it. So now it's no longer a 20-story high building. I think they're only going to go 6 stories up now eventually. And they're like halfway done, One of these days you'll be able to walk to this complex from here and go and have a look. I think part of the issue was, because this is a working observatory, is the light, the scattered light that this building was going to give off, which would hamper their work here at the observatory. So I think they found a nice little balance between the two things. And that's going to be interesting to see as well. But I want to know a little bit more about Sipokazi Vuso is her name, by the way, who's new on Radio Astro. She'll be joining us, balancing between me, Bobby Brown, and Beidou Adams. You would have heard from him as well. And you'll hear from him in future on Radio Astro as well. But I think Sipo is going to be the constant, because we need that female balance and we need the curiosity of the female mind and all those kinds of things. What did you think about the astronauts, the lady astronauts that were at the GA? Did you manage to meet Cyan Proctor or Mae Jemison, them, and so on?
I actually didn't meet Dr. Cyan,
Okay.
but she's cool. And,
She's so cool.
Amazing work that she's doing. It's good to see females taking center stage
Yeah.
in the field. It's
Exactly.
amazing. I did attend one of Mae Jason's sessions, and it was amazing.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's funny because Cyan Proctor, so I interviewed Mae Jemison on Radio Astro, and she was only able to give us 15 minutes. It's a funny story, this, because she had this handler, and I said, oh, can we have half an hour? And they said, no, no. No, at first I asked for an hour. I said, can we have an hour with her? And they said, no. And I said, okay, half an hour. And they said, no, you got 15 minutes. It's all you have because she's got other things to do. We got to stick to the schedule. And the program was like, oh, that's disappointing. But okay, we'll take 15 minutes. An hour and 15 minutes later, Mae Jameson was still sitting at our table, still having a good old chat with us. And that's how good that went. And then at the gala dinner, I got to meet Cyan Proctor. And she was just so cool because she knew about Radio Astro, which was the coolest thing about her. Never mind that she went to space. The fact that she knew about Radio Astro was like, you go, girl. And then she posed for a photograph.
But how amazing that we met all these women scientists and astronomers at a time where it's Women's Month.
Yes.
In South Africa
And I
right
somehow
now.
suspect the planning they planned it that way. They wanted it to be Women's Month here, which it is in August for us, but also Women's Day, which was in the right smack bang in the middle of the GA, which was kind of cool. And then they did a whole bunch of things with women in astronomy and young girls in
I
astronomy
was
and all those
sitting
kinds
right
of things.
there and listening to the speeches of scientists and astronomers that are in Africa and across the world, and I was enjoying. Their stories are just amazing, and the background and how they came up to be who they are, just blown away.
Yeah. So here's part of the mission of Radio Astro, if you are listening, and if you're an astronomer or if you're into space science, part of what we want to do is to simplify, firstly, space sciences and astronomy for the masses. We want to, remove the jargon. Because let's face it, sometimes astronomers get a little bit too into the subject, and then they start talking big words, and then they lose us. So the idea of Radio Astro is to take those big words and to simplify it, and to let young people get involved and engage with astronomy and space science, and maybe even get them to be interested in it, because I'm convinced there are people who don't know that they can actually do this job. And it was interesting about Mae Jameson, about what she was saying as well, that you don't become an astronomer. That's not the job. The job isn't an astronomer. The job is something else. The job is a botanist or a researcher or a biochemist, or that's the job. But in order to do that job in space, you need to be an astronaut. So you can't, like I did as a kid, aspire to becoming an astronaut. So essentially you're doing something else, and then you go do it in space, and by virtue of that, do you become an astronaut? So really the idea of Radio Astro is to inspire young people and to teach them that whatever it is you're interested in, you can do that thing in space.
Wow.
So you could be a writer in space, if that's what you want to do one day. Wouldn't it be cool to broadcast this show from space?
That would be so cool.
So just by the way, we are new to this building. I keep on every now and again tell you about the building, and the beautiful, stunning old building that we're in with high ceilings and wooden floors. And I met one of the communication specialists here a little bit earlier, and he was very interested in Radio Astro. And he said to me, what you guys should do? You should broadcast from Sutherland. And I said, oh, that sounds nice. And he said, no, it's absolutely. You should take your equipment there, and you should spend like a day or two there. The community is amazing. You can meet the locals. And I said, can we stay over? And he said, I'm sure Kevin will let you. So who knows? Maybe this becomes a traveling show. Maybe we end up in Sutherland one of these days.
That would be great. We want to see more and more of what's out there, especially in science, especially in astronomy.
Yeah, and talk to the young people there.
Yes.
And that's what I meant to say a little bit earlier, that if you are listening, the mission is really to simplify and to share and to engage and to encourage and motivate and inspire young people, right? So if you have a community radio station in the area that you're in, wherever you are in the world, approach them, tell them what we are doing. Say to them, they're going to be doing this regularly. We're very easy to find. You give them our online tags. It's always RadioAstro.Space, whether it's social media or whether it's actual just the internet. RadioAstro.Space. Tell them to go there and find us. And every now and again, we're going to be doing very cool things. We're going to be talking to like really cool people that they might want to know. And I'll give you an example of this, right? Let's say we have, and often this happens, there's an asteroid approaching, or there's a meteor approaching, or there's an eclipse, or here's an interesting thing, because somebody in my house is very interested in the retrogrades. So every now and again, Mars will be in retrograde. And in the world of, astronomers, in the world of astrology, Mars being in retrograde matters very, very much, because it affects people's moods and all sorts of crazy stuff. But here's the thing. What does it mean when Mars is in retrograde? Right? It's literally traveling backwards. But now you have to go to an astronomer to say, hold on, what do you mean Mars is traveling backwards? And then they can explain to you, all right, actually Mars has a particular elliptical orbit, and when you look at Mars at a certain time of the year, then it's traveling left to right, say, for example, and then when it takes the turn in its orbit, it's now going right to left. So it's looking to us like it's going backwards. So how that's going to affect your mood, Sipokazi, I don't know.
So interesting.
Why it makes you suddenly very moody and an awful person to be around. I don't know what that's got to do with Mars, but
It's so interesting. Astrology, astronomy.
Yeah.
How do we bond these things together?
they don't like it very much. Hey, the astronomers don't like the astrologers at all. The astrologers, I'd like to think, probably have a lot of respect for the astronomers, but the astronomers want nothing to do with it. One of the questions I asked in to one of the, I think it was Deborah Almagreen, who's the used to be the president of the IAU, isn't any longer for the last week.
Deborah,
Have
and
you?
Every
She's
time
wonderful.
I meet her, I'm starstruck.
She's wonderful, eh?
Yes,
She's wonderful.
She's amazing.
And one of the questions I asked her, actually, now we hope to play this interview for you again on Radio Astro in the near future, was on a scale from 1 to 10, how annoyed do you get with people when they confuse astronomy and astrology? And she said it's always a 9. So, but it's interesting that there are, and dare I say in my ignorance, there are similarities in the two things. Because, I mean, it's both about stars and planets and galaxies and all these kinds of things. The one is just a little bit more metaphysical than the other one, which is why I think the scientists don't like it so much, because it's a fringe science. But if you speak to the astrologers, they'll go, and here's a really good argument. Listen to this, just hear me out, right? Because it's interesting to me. They say we are 70% water, right? Human beings. You're made of 70% water. So this is like a known fact. Okay, fine. So the moon is responsible for the tides on Earth, high tide, low tide. So the moon has the ability to pull water or push water. That's what it does. That's how the tides happen. So isn't it therefore logical by extension that the moon is going to affect the water in our bodies? I don't know. I'm just asking the question. Doesn't that seems to make sense to me? So if the moon is, maybe it moves only big bodies of water one way or the other, and we're a small body of water, but still maybe it affects you just a little bit. Maybe it's pulling water to the left of you, and then tomorrow it's pushing water to the right of you, and that's why you say mean things to me?
I cannot wait until we have these people sitting next to us and we pose this question.
Ask
and
these
even
questions of
online.
them and
It's
hear what
gonna
they
be-
say.
It's going to be amazing.
Because what's wonderful about astronomers also is that they're willing to explore these crazy ideas. They have to, I think.
And we have these questions, these crazy questions. So we want them to join us and we talk to them and we
I want to
see
see.
how it goes, yeah.
I want to see the astronomer's face when I say, "I've got an astrological question for you." And yes, speaking about seeing their faces, we are trying to get a camera together, guys, just so you know. And we want to park a camera in our little studio here, which is an old office. Those of you who know Charles Takalana, he's Kevin Governor's deputy. We are in his old office. Which is why it's sounding a bit hollow. We are trying to get a camera in here, so that you can see the faces of the astronomers when we speak to them, because some of them will be physically here in our studio, those who are in Cape Town. Others will be online, obviously. But I really want to see the person's face that we asked that question of. So about the moon affecting our moods. But do you know, out of curiosity and as an aside, that it's the reason why, and just think about this for a moment,
Okay.
why people are called lunatics. No, I'm serious.
Wow.
The word lunatic
actually
comes from
Interesting.
lunar. When they say you're bothered by the moon, in Afrikaans, it's an Afrikaans phrase, it says, "Met die maan gepla," which literally translates to being bothered by the moon. And it comes from this whole thing. Lunatic literally comes from that. It's an old word that's from there. And so that means there's got to be some factual basis.
Yes, but do you see how astronomy is part of our lives?
Oh.
We live it, and
Every day.
it's very important for us to have these discussions and to explore where these things are, and to speak to the people that are in the field who have all this knowledge and information to share with us.
You're absolutely spot on. And I said this once as well, that we don't realize until you actually pause and really think about it deeply, you don't realize how astronomy has played a role in our lives since the beginning of time. There's always been some sort of link with astronomy. And if you're Christian, for example, and if you believe the Christian story of Jesus' birth and so forth, the way the wise men, the magi, the way they found baby Jesus was by means of a star. I mean, they followed a star in the sky. So there's astronomy, right? The way people navigated the oceans, the first sailors, was by means of the stars. I mean, they literally were able to plot the stars, and that's how they got from one place to the other. And there's even speculation that the way the world got populated, so people would cross out of Africa over the Bering Strait, for example, into the Americas, and into the global south and all these kinds of things. And they would walk over massive patches of land that would only emerge during low tide. And the way they did that was to follow stars. So they would literally follow northern stars, in the case of the Bering Strait, to get to North America. So that to me is fascinating. And I mean, they didn't know what they were doing, right? They just saw a little twinkly thing in the sky and just kind of walked in the general direction of that thing, and then couldn't get back again because now it was low tide, and now the piece of land that they were walking on is gone. So they just stayed.
Wow.
And so this,
amazing.
and then you can go on and on and on. I was saying about how our arts, for example, is affected by astronomy. If you think about music, I mean, the songs we play on Radio Astro all somehow have a heavenly, celestial influence, if you will. There's another one. Somebody's name, if your name is Celeste, celestial, it comes from celestial. Isn't that fascinating? We play that kind of music, but the artists for years and years have been inspired by the heavens and the stars, so they make music about it. Painters, the painting of Van Gogh, the Starry Night, influenced by the heavens.
Actually, my favorite artist.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Are you a fan?
Yes, I am, definitely.
So here's my thing about that. Let's wander off in this direction very quickly. He's literally lost his mind. He was a lunatic, right? Literally lost. He cut off his own freaking ear, for heaven's sake, right? So now I wonder: does it require madness or lunacy for you to be a great artist?
Wow, that's such a great question.
I-
I'm not an artist, but I think there is some form of madness.
Probably, because the really good ones, they're little.
But it comes out very nicely. So they have that madness, but when it comes out, when we see it, it's beautiful. It's something artistic. So
I find that the artists who are, and I talk about all of them, the visual artists, all of them, the normal ones aren't as good as the crazy ones. Just think about the ones who are a little bit touched, a little bit out of touch with reality, just a little bit wonky. Those are the ones they make fantastic art.
brilliant. Yeah.
I mean, Michael
brilliant
Jackson
art.
came up with the moonwalk, for heaven's sake, but he's also suspect when it comes to little people. I say that in the nicest possible way about Michael, because he's now a star himself. But I mean, it's a really good case in point, and I'm really curious about that, because it's just one of those subjects you go like, wow, and there was a phrase for this that I forget now, but it's a phrase something like that you have to be tortured, I think the phrase is. And you'll find it very frequently with painters and writers. If you think about Sylvia Plath and all these writers,
Yeah.
they were literally out of touch with reality, and they were tortured souls. And
I
then
have friends who are artists, and they told me that sometimes they speak to their sculptures. So imagine that.
you need a new group of friends.
So yeah.
I don't think it's a problem talking to the sculpture. I think you should really worry when the sculpture starts talking back. Then maybe we are also very near, for geographical sake, right next door to Cape Town's oldest lunacy asylum. It's called Valkenburg. I'm not kidding you. I know it sounds nuts, but we are situated geographically right next door to Valkenburg. So use it, don't use it. I just thought I'd tell you.
Just coming back to
Pull us right back, because he's losing it.
just coming back to empowering young people. I like the idea of us having maybe some school kids who are very interested
wouldn't
in
that be great?
astronomy,
Yes.
and who really, really want to learn more and want to talk about what they learn in school, and having
Yes.
them here around with us, and then just share what they are busy with and
That's a great idea.
what they would like to do. And I'm sure there's so many kids who are so interested in science and would like to be astronomers one day, but they don't even know the know-how on where to begin, who to speak to, where to go. So we need those people here as well, and to share and to see how our listeners can come in and maybe help. And
That's great. Were you present when they did the link up with kids in the International Space Station at the GA? Were
Yes,
you
I
there?
was,
Were you
yes.
present in the hall?
No, I was
Oh, you
not
weren't in the hall,
but
'cause
but
amazing to
I did
watch.
interact with the kids there. It was phenomenal. Like
Oh.
the way they are so interested in science.
Yeah.
Like, how can I be a scientist? How can I be an astronomist? I mean,
Yeah.
These people.
So there
like,
was a moment. It wasn't very long. I forget which day. I stumbled into it where they had a live link up to the International Space Station, and they a whole bunch of kids. There's probably about 10 of them who could each ask the astronaut on board the ISS a question, which was kind of cool. And she would answer.
Amazing.
She answered straight away. It was a live link up. It was so cool.
Wow,
and I was like,
that's
if I was a kid, I'd love it. Even now as an adult, I'd love to do that. Speaking to somebody live on the International Space
Wow, that
Station.
is amazing.
And some really cool, interesting, deep questions. Some light, obviously. How do you go to the toilet in space? Question everybody wants to know the answer to that. But also some meaningful questions, which is really cool. But I like the idea of getting a kid in, maybe, to ask the questions instead of you and I.
Exactly, that would be so fun.
Because they would ask completely different questions of an astronomer. And
Yes,
something
with
that...
a different view.
Yeah, you and I might not think of at all, actually,
Yeah.
completely.
And they're very smart. We did some outreach programs where we visited some schools with some scientists and some astronomers during the GA, and the questions the kids were asking, amazing.
Did you actually take kids to schools during the GA?
We went to schools
Okay.
to visit them with some scientists. We were going to speak to them about what they do, about the work that they do, and about their own profession. So the kids would ask questions, interact with them, and it was very fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you like working with kids?
I do actually, yeah.
More so than adults, or?
How do I answer that question?
Yes, I prefer kids and dogs. Hate adults. They bother me. Is the correct way to answer the question.
But I
Because you
love
know.
kids so much. I like their curious mind, and I love working with them.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
adults, I prefer more.
So if you had, like, if you could, for example, ask any astronomer or astrophysicist or space scientist, say, as a general term, a question that's been bothering you about astronomy or anything, if you were going to, is there a question that itches in the back of your head where you're like, really want to know the answer to that?
I actually like this idea of going to space.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to. Can everybody do it?
You mean, can anybody go, like, physiologically? Is it possible for anybody to go? Or I
Yes.
see. Or
And if it's gonna
financially?
if you have the money and you just want to say, I can build something.
Yeah.
Can I just go?
Can you just go? You mean, okay, I see. So can I just, in my backyard, in my garage, knock together a rocket and go to space? Is the question.
Yes, that's
What
the
an amazing question. So I don't know, I do know two things. The one, there's a movie called The Astronaut Farmer with Billy Bob Thornton, where he does exactly that. He's a farmer, and he was denied access by NASA to go to space, and he builds his own rocket. And he buys rocket fuel in the whole 9 yards and goes to space. And NASA tries to stop him. There's a nice little drama attached, and he eventually ends up going.
I need to see this movie.
It's a good movie. It'll teach you how to build a rocket, and then you could do it yourself also. And he's got the whole control room in his farmyard, in the barn, and his kid comes and helps him. It's fascinating. It's a lovely movie. So in the movies you can, the answer is yes. In real life, so I know that there's this argument about who owns space, who owns the moon, who owns, like, because nobody does really, right? But there are people who lay claim to sections of the moon, like the Russians. They put their rover over there, so that's their piece. And now the Chinese, they're on the dark side of the moon, so that's their little bit. And the UAE wants to go, so that'll be their little bit. But ultimately, I know there's a treaty that's signed through, and I, again, speak under correction, I think it's a UN treaty, and I think it's a space treaty, and it's got to do with using access to space for good. And I think the answer to your question, I think, is that everybody has access to space. But I do think there's a measure of control by certain bodies and governments, because obviously they've got all the money and all the resources, And I don't think they're going to like you just taking off from your parking lot and then requiring them to come help you. But look, in all fairness,
But I think it's better that way.
probably.
It's
But
better that way.
in all fairness, space is a bit like sort of the big oceans, right? It's a similar sort of thing. If you think about it, 500 years ago, people jumped into ships and then set sail to unknown places and ended up somewhere that they didn't know existed. So space is kind of similar, and sometimes they get into trouble and everybody else would come and help them. So if you ended up in trouble somewhere in space, and then NASA would probably go, we told you not to go, but they'll come help you, I think.
Oh, and NASA was there at the GA.
Was that amazing?
Amazing.
I was so starstruck.
Yeah.
I was so starstruck.
It was just.
Because I grew up wanting to be an astronaut.
Wow. Please, share.
It was one of those, it was actually went far with this, I really did. I mean, I was a kid, I was probably 12 or 13, and I was convinced I was going to be an astronaut. I didn't know enough. So I thought I needed to be particularly good at maths and physics. Maths I could master, physics I was rubbish at. Not rubbish, parts of physics I wasn't too great at. And so I kind of almost gave up in my head a little bit, but I did write to NASA. And I did get a reply. And they directed me to the American embassy here in Cape Town, which we still have. And they said, oh, go and make some more inquiries there. And I actually did. I made a whole lot of inquiries. I found out about funding and potential bursaries and all sorts of things. But I never understood the difference between being an astronaut, as I said at the beginning, and being something else that requires you to be an astronaut, which is actually the correct way. So I should have studied anything else, biochemistry, which would have been a good idea, and then used that to say, hey, listen, I want to go to space to study biochemistry in space, which is what they do, and then they make you an astronaut. I mean, they don't make you an astronaut, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
They train you and, you know, give you equipment and...
So you suggest if you were an astronaut, you would be having a different conversation.
Yes, very much, very, very much. And I'm disappointed in myself now that I didn't pursue it further, because for what it's worth, Elon Musk is only 1 month older than me. And it was roughly at the same time when we had the same dreams, 12, 13, 14. He was building games and selling it for $500 online at the time. I was playing with spinning tops in the street. So obviously we had very, very, very different motivations. He was considering moving to Canada with his mom and then immigrating to the States from there. I knew where Canada was on a map, you know, so we had very, very sort of different motivations at the time. But had I had my heads, and it really comes, and maybe this is where Radio Astro will play a nice big role as well, to teach people the value in their dreams and also that things are possible. Because the reason why I didn't pursue that in seriousness, because there wasn't a Radio Astro in my life to teach me that what I'm dreaming is in fact possible. So whomever I spoke to at the time thought I was nuts. They thought I was crazy. So I was like, you never be an astronaut, be silly. You won't go work for NASA, please. You know, so the responses were negative. And if you have negative responses about your dreams often enough, you start believing those negative responses. So becoming an astronaut was just a pipe dream for me in the end.
Yes.
No, go ahead.
Just to add on that, I mean, some of our communities, they believe that you just have to be a nurse or a teacher.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But why can't you be a nurse or a teacher in space? Do you know what I mean?
See?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So these things are possible. And I had a mentor of some sort, you know, somebody to say, no, come on, let's see. You know, let's write to NASA together. You know, let's go and do some research. Let's save up some money and let's go to America. Because how's that possible for a 12-year-old? Come, let's save up some money. Let's go to America. Let's go to NASA. Let's go knock on the door there and go ask some questions. Maybe there's a bursary. Maybe they can help you. There were actually ways and means of doing it at that time that I just wasn't aware of. Because it seemed so big.
And that's why it's so important to have this Radio Astro, and
Yeah.
why it's important to have the GA, because now to actually have the school learners there.
Yep.
At the GA,
Yep.
and so that they can be able to be exposed to these things, because sometimes all people are missing is just the exposure.
Yep.
Is it possible? Yes, it is.
It is very possible. And also there were other avenues. You know, I could have done other things, for example, astronomy. That didn't have to be astronaut. It could have been peripheral careers around an astronaut. I could have done astronomy, astrophysics, a whole bunch of other things. I had such a nice compliment from Deborah Elmer Green, actually. Gave me such a nice compliment. She's sitting across the table from me at the GA, and we were talking about something, and I said something funny. And she said to me, you remind me so much of Neil Tyson.
Oh.
And I said, what now? And she said, do you know Neil Tyson? I said, you mean Neil deGrasse Tyson? And she was like, you remind me so much of him. And I'm going, are you serious? I hope she's listening to this right now. And she said, yeah, you guys have a similar sense of humor, and you so much like, no, it wasn't Deborah, it was Vanessa McBride. Vanessa McBride is the head of the International Science Union, who said that to me. And I was like, do you have his number? And she was like, I do. And can I have your phone? Because I really would love to have his number. Wouldn't it be cool if we got him on the show?
Oh, yes.
Are you
Can we try?
I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of his. Whenever I want to understand complicated things, like if I want to understand parallel universes or black holes or whatever, I go to Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's the king of simplifying complex issues for me. And I think on the list it would be him, and then Bill Nye, the science guy, and then Brian Cox. But there's a few of them. But he's just so good. I think we should put out a call. If you guys know of Vanessa and others, if you know how to get hold of these people, we'd love to have them on, even if it's just for a bit, you know, just to ask them silly questions.
That would be great.
It would be so neat.
That would be great. That would be awesome.
What was your dream growing up? What were you going to be?
Oh, I had a lot of dreams.
Such as?
But I wanted radio, which I'm doing now. Was
Oh,
one of
wow.
the things that I wanted to do. I also wanted to be a teacher because that was what we were told, like teacher or nurse. Those are the two.
But you don't
things.
look like somebody who listens.
Is that a compliment or not?
Backhanded in some way or form. Yeah.
Anyways, I wanted to be a teacher and I wanted to be on radio. I wanted to
Yeah.
do anything in media, even TV. I wanted to do more stuff,
Okay.
more media related stuff when I grew up.
So you got a
yeah.
more of a face for TV
Yes,
than,
but
than
it-
for radio.
Yes, but I didn't know any scientists or any astronomers when I grew up or around me, and so this is why this is so important. I can't wait to meet everyone we're gonna have on the show and
Yeah.
who we're gonna speak to because I have so many questions.
I think this is the next best thing, in my opinion, being a science communicator. Because if you can't do it, then you can talk about it.
Yes.
You know, like they say, if you're no good at it, then teach it. Because that's ultimately what happens. And I consider myself, these days a science communicator of some sort because I do it on different platforms. And I think that's kind of it's a really nice consolation prize because while I might not be able to go to space, and touch wood, maybe one day I still will, but it's a nice consolation prize to be able to be close to people who have been. Close to people who understand it better than I do. And who knows, you certainly are still young enough to be able to go to space one day, like literally go as a tourist to space without it having cost you an arm and a leg. And that's very likely to happen within the next 10 years, actually. I mean, you can do it now already, but it's going to cost you forever.
Don't put ideas in my head.
No, I'm
I wanna go to
serious.
space now.
You can go. Jeff Bezos' Blue Origins will take you. But I think that's a I lied. That's a $2 million flight. But some people argue it's not really space, because he takes you up to just the edge of Leo, the edge of the lower Earth orbit, and then you kind of fall back slowly. So some people go, that's not really space. Or Elon will take you for, I think that is 12 million, but I speak under correction there as well. And Virgin Galactic will take you one of these days as well. That is a super one because that is a supersonic flight. So you're in a plane that's attached to another plane under the belly of the plane, and then the plane takes off and kind of goes to the edge of the I think it's the edge of the stratosphere, but I might be wrong. And then it drops this little plane underneath that you're in, and then it drops it, and a split second later, the rockets in that little plane fire up, and then you blast off. And then within a second or two, you are flying at supersonic speed, and then you break through terminal velocity, and you're in space. No, excuse me, not terminal velocity, escape velocity, and then you're in space for a couple of seconds.
Wow.
And that I think is the cheapest one. I think that one is 6 million.
I think we should have spoken to people at NASA. that
Dollars.
were at the GA.
Did I say dollars? Yeah, I said yes, do your conversions.
Yes, no, we should have spoken to the people from NASA who were at the GA.
I did
Should
make a
have
friend.
bagged them,
I did
please.
make a friend at NASA.
Okay, great.
Hello, Rhiannon. How are you? Love you. Any spare seats available? I'm here. No, I did drop
there's
lots of
any
hints.
space.
I dropped lots of hints. I said to NASA, if ever you need for last minute cancellation, I'm available. How long's astronaut training? A couple of minutes, I'm sure. I can manage. And that's another thing we must talk about one day.
Epic would it be? It would have come true.
Exactly. The kind of training that astronauts have to go through. That's crazy. We must do that at some point. Talk to them, because I did speak to Cyan a little bit, Dr. Proctor a little bit, about the training that they go through, because that's just mad. Do you know they train for not months, they train for years. Physical training. I mean, this is physical, this is the peak of physical fitness when they go, right? And they've got to be able to do all sorts of apparently it's those spacesuits that they're in look easy to maneuver in, but it's apparently not. They are perspiring all the time in there.
They make it look easy.
They do, and that's, I think, the skill, right? The professional skill, the fact that they make it look so easy. And do you know that those spacesuits also have, if you have a bathroom emergency, the spacesuit has it built in. I know. How smelly are those spacesuits exactly? Really love to know
We
that.
need to get Dr. Proctor here with us so that she can share some
That'll
of
be
these
lovely.
details.
That'll be
great.
lovely.
That'd be
So you'll hear a lot more from us. We thought we'll just say hello to you guys today, let you know that we're here and that we're going to continue to be here for a little while. Let everybody else know that we're here. get in touch with Kevin Govender or with Charles Takalani or with any of the executives at the IAU and tell them how much you love Radio Astro, because then we'll continue to be here until Rome 2027. Are you planning to go to Rome 2027?
Yes, I can't wait.
I'm also planning. In my head, I'm planning.
It's in my plan.
As to who will fund these plans of mine, we'll have to wait and see. But that's how much we would love to continue going until Rome 2027. And if you drop us if you drop a good word with the powers that be, who knows? We may end up taking Radio Astro to Rome in 2027.
Yes, I believe it. I see it.
That'll be great. So we're planning to be back on Monday morning. It's 11 a.m. CAT, Central African time, and we're going to go until 3 p.m. CAT. That's on Monday, and then we'll do the same again on Thursday, and then going forward, it'll be every Monday, every Thursday. So do let your friends know that they must tune into RadioAstro-Space, and you'll sometimes hear me, Bobby Brown, sometimes you'll hear Beidou Adams, and you'll almost always hear Sipokazi Vuso, new voice on Radio Astro. All right, everybody, as I said, curated songs. Let's see if I can find one for you very quickly. If I can make the computer work. There we go. Then I will hit play over there, and maybe Sade will come through. Let's see what happens.
I was the one. I
every one of them twinkling. Baby, what were you thinking?
Moon and the sky, you always know.
We had the moon and the sky above, and I gave you my love.